Hey, I'm hoping you're doing awesome and you've subscribed to the channel. I'm looking at the September issue of Forbes Africa, and it's one of those that is a collector's item because this conversation never goes out of vogue. And it's the quest to live longer, from fiction to fact, why the immortality industry is the next big business. I'm one of those people who thinks, do I want to live longer or do I want to live better? I think if I lived longer, but my quality of life wasn't wonderful, I'd be miserable. So I think that balance must also be struck. However, a couple of weeks ago, I got an interesting poem from somebody, and one of the most amazing lines of that poem said, "You have two lives, and your second life begins the day you realize you only have one." Think about it as you grab this issue of Forbes Africa. So apparently you only live twice, maybe. Maybe what happens is the minute you get over that fourth floor, you begin thinking, hey, I gotta take care of the few years I have left, okay? Because all you have is about 15 minutes, all right? What I love about this issue, of course, is you know, the homes of the future, what are they gonna look like? Even if we could conquer death, should we? That I think is a very important question. Should you even, you know, think about it? I don't think so. Even if I could conquer death, I don't think, no, I'm not one of those people, by the way, who's scared of death. Huh? And then there's a piece here called Forever Young. Now, this is this gentleman's fifth startup, and Ned David has the blueprint for creating a lucrative biotech. His latest project is a company that will take on the ravages of aging. It would be nice to see what that is about. And then there's an interesting conversation here. It's a focus on crime in South Africa, and it is the dramatic surge of violent cash and transit robberies in South Africa, and it has the cash services industry fighting back. You need to find out how they're fighting back. And I saw a very interesting piece here because, you know, in Kenya, in East Africa, and in Africa, we all keep talking about startups. But apparently, and this is important reading, there's a reason why most startups fail in the first year. Find out by buying this issue of Forbes Africa. And one other thing I want to call to your attention is the Wastepreneur. This is a gentleman called Awuku who has slept on a bench, he is hunted in the bush, he worked at a church and sifted through mountains of plastic waste, and he's a man turning trash into cash in Ghana. Read about him. And then there's a man who sank his finances to clean the ocean. I've actually read his story somewhere else, but I think it's worth telling. And this one might be a bit controversial. It says, growing up poor is a good thing. I'm in agreement, by the way. No, buy me a cup of coffee and I'll explain why that is something I totally agree with. But I do want you to get this issue of Forbes Africa. However, I'd like to make an appeal to my Kenyan and East African brothers and sisters, to Jackson Biko, to Oyungo Pala, to Joki Shege, to Ayua Muli. I love this magazine. It's the only one I review on the continent, if not in the world. And the reason I do is that I love its power to tell our story and paint a picture of us that is not often told, okay? But it's very hard for me as a Kenyan and as an East African to keep reviewing this magazine, and it's full of stories from South Africa and West Africa, and yet you complain. You can't complain, and you can't complain to me or to Forbes Africa, because nobody will tell our story if we're not willing to tell it ourselves. So my email is at the end of this video. I want you to get in touch with me, and I want you to make it a focus that it's great that you do a column for a local newspaper or a local magazine, but don't you think it's time that your skill and your voice and your words were read across the continent? And isn't it time you showcased Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi in a bigger and better light? This is the platform. Please use it. It's one of them. It's the one I review, but please use your skills. Yes, I called out a few names. I know there's a lot more. And if you're sitting there hiding your skill because you're thinking you're not good enough, why don't you let Forbes Africa decide that? Okay? Thank you for listening. Buy it. Do I have a few copies? I think I have 10. If you want a copy, you know what to do. I always deliver. Okay? Fantastic.